Bad Blood 2024 has come and gone, and while there was a lot of blood spilled, there was a lot of bad as well. Bad booking decisions, bad execution, and bad finishes. Bad Blood 2024 is one of the most confusing PLEs of the year, and quite possibly of the entire Paul Levesque era, as even the good left a bitter taste in my mouth. In this video, I'm going to cover the winners and losers of each match, what I liked and disliked, and where I think the participants go from here. First up on the card was CM Punk and Drew McIntyre going toe-to-toe inside Hell in a Cell, and right off the bat, I have so much frustration about this. I'll get into the match in a moment, and trust me, there's a lot to cover, but what in the hell was this match doing at the top of the card? Anywhere but the main event was the incorrect spot on the card for this type of match. You think about Bad Blood 1997, 2003, and 2004, and all three earlier editions of this PLE were main evented by the Hell in a Cell match. And before you say, but Sean, the main event had the WWE Undisputed Champion involved. 1997 Bad Blood's Hell in a Cell featured Undertaker and Shawn Michaels in a #1 contender match for the WWE Championship, and the Hell in a Cell match in 2004 was a grudge match between Triple H and Shawn Michaels. No, instead there were other reasons why the main event of 2024 was what it was, and I'll get into it once we reach the match. The fact that this match wasn't the main event was so deflating, and you could tell the crowd was just drained from this match once it was all said and done. It's a shame because this was absolutely the best match of the night, no contest, and it going first was not good for the crowd that ate everything up and gave it their all. Now the match itself, perfect. This may go down as one of the greatest Hell in a Cell matches of all time, and I'd even make an argument that it was the best. At 45 years old, CM Punk is still managing to live up to his nickname as the best in the world, and he absolutely put on a clinic with Drew McIntyre. The match was brutal, it was unforgiving, and it was borderline uncomfortable at certain points in the match. We had wrenches being carved into the forehead of both competitors, a table that had a broken leg that was ripped off and used by both guys to inflict more pain and choke each other, another table that was used in a spot that featured a superplex to the outside, sending both Drew and Punk through it. This match went on for over half an hour and it was just non-stop carnage. At one point, Punk clobbered Drew with a toolbox and just absolutely busted him wide open, to the point that Drew lifted his head and blood began to pour out into the ring. The fun part about this match was that both Drew and Punk got their portions of offense in, and it always kept myself and the crowd on our toes, waiting to see what would happen next and if either men would be standing on their own 2 feet by the end of it. On to the finish, Drew brought out a bag which I thought might be thumbtacks, but we actually get a good piece of storytelling as Drew pours out the contents, which were revealed to be beads similar to the bracelet that Drew broke. We go to the attempted Claymore as Punk is in front of the ring steps, but as Punk dodges the move, Drew lands into the steps on his tailbone, and I kid you not, it had me flinching. It was one of the gnarliest spots I've ever seen in quite some time, and I wouldn't be surprised if Drew has a hard time walking the next day. I'm actually kind of glad we now have a day bumper between a PLE and a Monday Night Raw, as not too long ago these PLEs were taking place on Sunday nights rather than Saturday. The finish came with Punk wrapping a chain around his knee, pouring some beads into Drew's mouth, and hitting a GTS for the win. Post-match, the two sold the events of the match with Punk collapsing multiple times and needing an oxygen mask, while Drew looked completely out of it and could barely stand. The only complaint I have about this match was that it didn't go last on the card, because this was an absolute masterclass of a Hell in a Cell match, and I feel that the younger generations of wrestlers will look at this match as my generation did with the Shawn Michaels and Undertaker match from 1997. For all the people that said Punk was washed, let this be a lesson that even at 45, CM Punk is still capable of putting on a match of the year candidate and look great. I'm giving this one a very ecstatic 2 thumbs up, and if I could grow a third arm, I'd give it 3. As for where Punk and Drew go from here, a few months ago I would have said Punk's next target could be Seth Rollins, but since he's now entering into a feud with Bronson Reed, perhaps the World Heavyweight Championship isn't as far away as I originally expected. For Drew, some of his best work has come off the backs of a loss, and the sky is the limit with whoever he goes after next. Maybe he still has a lust for blood with Punk, or maybe something entirely different comes up. We'll have to wait and see, but I'm absolutely positive it'll be great regardless of what Drew does. Taking a look at Bayley versus Nia Jax for the WWE Women's Championship next, and I'm going to be as frank and honest about this match because it's a real shame since I think both of these women have been putting out some of their best work in recent memory, but this match just wasn't good. I think part of the reason why I and so many others were let down by this performance was because of the high expectations we had coming into it. If you rewind back to their match at SummerSlam, the expectations of that match were very low, and they came out and tore it down, which is why everyone left that match being impressed. So at Bad Blood, people were hoping for a repeat performance of the two wrestlers that worked well together and have proven they can put out a quality match, and this just wasn't it. I fully accept the fact that some got entertainment out of the sloppiness and botch-filled sequences, but for me, I just got taken out of the moment and felt myself cringing more often than I had hoped for. On top of it all, this is the match that followed CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, so you knew the crowd wouldn't be as active for what is considered to be the dead spot of the card. For those that don't know, the dead spot is essentially the match that follows a huge match, which allows the crowd to breathe and relax a little before we get the next big match. Unfortunately, because of this, the crowd's lack of participation also hurt the overall feel for the match. Another problem is that we've kind of run through the Bayley Nia Jax story, and it's beginning to feel a little stale. I thought Bad Blood was the perfect opportunity to introduce a new opponent like Naomi, but understood that there was the rematch that was eventually going to happen, even though Bayley still had to weirdly fight for it. This match had quite a few missed spots and some that were entertaining. For example, I don't think anyone had a Nia Jax Hurricane Rana on their bingo card, but if you did, congrats to you. We also got another teased cash-in from Tiffany Stratton, who came out to hit Bayley with the briefcase at a time when Nia and the referee were down. This set up what I thought was a brilliant spot, where the referee picks up the dropped briefcase and hands it over to Tiffany at the very moment when Nia Jax sits up in Undertaker fashion. From her perspective, it looks like Tiffany is handing the briefcase to the referee to cash in, but from the viewer's point of view, we know that wasn't the case. After that, all hell breaks loose and Bayley eventually gets the upper hand, only for Tiffany Stratton to throw the briefcase at Bayley while she's on the turnbuckle. Bayley catches it and throws it back to Tiffany, who acts like she was blasted by the briefcase. It was one of the most bizarre sequences of the night and made absolutely no sense, but the distraction was enough for Nia to hit a top rope Samoan drop and the finish for the pinfall win. Unfortunately, I'm giving this match a thumbs down, as it was nowhere near the spectacle they put on at SummerSlam, and there was just too many missed cues and sloppy sequences that took me out of the match. Both Bayley and Nia Jax have put on better performances in recent memory, so I'm hoping this is a one-off, but at the same time, I hope we also move on from this program and have someone else challenge Nia Jax for her title. Maybe it's Naomi, Michin, or even Chelsea Green, but Bayley's kind of caught in a bit of limbo if there's no championship to chase for, so perhaps we see her and Tiffany work for a few weeks. Moving to the midway point of the night, Finn Balor and Damian Priest went one-on-one to squash their hatred for one another and find out whether it was Damien that needed the Judgment Day to be made, or if he could beat Finn Balor and put an end to their slander. Ironically enough, during my predictions, I said this was probably the match that I had the easiest time deciding on who I thought would come out as the winner, judging my decision solely on who benefits more from a victory. I went with Finn Balor for a few reasons, one of them being that Damien and Rhea were fresh off a win at Bash in Berlin, and the other being that Finn Balor kind of needs the win to establish himself as a player on Raw. Unfortunately, I don't think he's ever beating those pin Balor allegations, as he took the loss in this one in a really odd fashion. It's become a case now where I don't know where they're going with Finn Balor as a character, if he's going to fall in the backrooms for a long time, or if there's a future for him contending for the World Heavyweight Championship. It wasn't long ago that he and Damien were tag team champions together, and the writing was on the wall that there would be an eventual turn, and Finn would become a singles main event guy once again. Instead, we have Finn Balor as a tag team champion once again with JD McDonough, and just kind of floating around and not really doing much. For this match, I actually really liked the majority of it. Damien and Finn have wonderful chemistry and know how to work a crowd, especially with Finn in the role as a heel. I don't think too many people were expecting this match to be bad, and rightfully so. Damien has grown into a solid and reliable guy in big match moments, and Finn is honestly one of the best technical wrestlers that uses ring psychology to his advantage. Where the match loses its shine for me is with the involvement of the Judgment Day and the lead up to the finish. Look, these two are more than capable of telling a story on their own, and anything beyond that just feels like another episode of Monday Night Raw. We've seen the same outcome on multiple episodes of Raw, and if we're going to replicate that, this match would have been best served on Monday night in order to save room for another match, like Bronson Reed and Braun Strowman's last Monster Standing match. Beyond the involvement of Carlito and JD McDonough, the finish just made absolutely no sense to me and needs to be studied for weeks after what we saw. Finn Balor's original coup de grace connects and earns a 2 count, much to the surprise of Finn and the Judgment Day crew. So then he sets up not one, but 2 more coup de grace that connects with the back of Damien's head, which led me to believe we're seeing a more vicious side of Finn. What we got instead was a 4th attempt at a coup de grace, which gets countered into a South of Heaven chokeslam and the 1-2-3 for Damian Priest. As an observer, I'm left wondering about the logic of this finish. It not only makes Finn look incredibly weak with his 3 successful finishers landing, only to be hit by one of Damien's finishers and get pinned clean, but it gives him the loss as well, which does absolutely nothing for him as the backstabber Balor. The impression I get is that Finn is great on Mondays and can stand tall over his opponent, but when it matters, he just doesn't get it done. I unfortunately have to give this match a thumbs down as well, as the finish absolutely destroys the goodwill both men put into the match. Not only doesn't it compute in my mind on the direction of the finish, but now where do both men go? Naturally, the program continues for another month, as Judgment Day won't be thrilled with taking the loss here, and Damien doesn't really have anywhere to go other than a rinse and repeat series with Finn or someone else from Judgment Day. That would have made more sense if Damien lost, as the hunger to get revenge would not be satisfied, and we could get an angrier, more intense Damien coming out to challenge Judgment Day. I really don't know how to feel about this one, because on one hand, the match itself was really good. On the other hand, the finish was a disaster, and the next couple of weeks are going to be interesting to see how they come back from it. Before getting to the bottom half of the card, Triple H was out to make a special announcement. Going into this, I learned that a producer was assigned to the segment, which is usually reserved for segments involving physicality. Triple H made the announcement that at Crown Jewel, the two main champions in both the men's and women's divisions would wrestle in an exhibition-style match, where neither of their titles would be on the line, but the winner of each match would be crowned the 2024 Crown Jewel Super Duper Champion. He then lifts the fabric from the podium to reveal one of the bigger eyesores I've seen in quite some time. The belt is ugly, let's not kid ourselves, but I do see some potential with the exhibition matches. Now, what I thought the announcement was going to be, especially when there was a title hidden underneath that familiar black fabric, was the introduction of the women's mid-card titles. There's been rumors floating around about them being in the works now, and the announcement felt like it was leaning in that direction until we got what we got. I'll say this, if there's one positive takeaway I can get out of this announcement, it's the potential of a Tiffany Stratton cash-in. Just think about the possibility of seeing both Nia Jax and Liv Morgan out cold, and Tiffany running down to cash in. We don't know who she's cashing in on, and the belief is it's Nia, just based off the interactions the two have had over the last few months, only for her to cash in on Liv. This would mean a switch to the red brand if she wins, but it's a moment that could garner a lot of interest from the audience. And then we got Gunther out to talk about the big ugly belt, point out Bill Goldberg in attendance, and claim that he didn't mean what he said when he said that Bill Goldberg was his favorite, and even told his son, Gage, that he hopes Bill Goldberg is a better father than he is a wrestler. This led to a whole thing with Bill jumping the barricade and threatening to get into the ring, which gave us one of the best lines I've heard Gunther throw out, telling Bill Goldberg that he had 3 minutes for him, alluding to the fact that Bill Goldberg matches only last around 3 minutes. Sami came out and attacked Gunther, and then that was it. There's belief that Bill Goldberg could wrestle one more match, but for the love of God, no. We don't need it or want it. Let his name be a thing of the past. The Liv Morgan Rhea Ripley match was the next one up, and the main story revolving around this build-up was the idea of having Dominik Mysterio locked up in a shark cage. Unfortunately, with the Hell in a Cell hanging above the ring, the shark cage Dom was in couldn't be placed above the ring like it normally would, which meant it was awkwardly left hanging at the bottom of the entrance ramp. Of course, they played things up by pointing out Dom also has a fear of heights, and Rhea left a roll of Dirty Dom toilet paper inside for him to use. While Dom was left hanging and looking terrified, Rhea and Liv actually put on an entertaining match, and I think this is where they're both at their best. Rhea works extremely well as the powerhouse against smaller opponents, and she manages to bring out the best in Liv, who always puts up some of her best work when involved with Rhea Ripley. The two played up the roles of Rhea being the more powerful wrestler and ragdolling Liv, while Liv then played mind games by attacking Rhea's knee and isolating the affected limb to keep her grounded and continue the offense. We then had Rhea pick up some momentum and put on a comeback before the action spilled to the outside of the ring and seeing Rhea hit a riptide on Liv on the outside, directly in front of Dom. This is where the wheels kind of come off for me, as Dom manages to kick the shark cage door open and takes one of the scariest falls I've ever witnessed. For a moment I thought I was about to see a man take one of the most horrifying backdrops in history, only for Dom to get tangled up in a chain and hung up like a piñata. At this point, we're well beyond double countout, as it's been minutes that both Rhea and Liv are outside the ring. Rhea brings Liv back to the ring and tells the referee, "Hey, I got a dirty piñata over there, and I gotta do what I gotta do, BRB." And Rhea grabs a kendo stick and begins to whack Dom relentlessly while the crowd eats it up. To be fair, this was pretty entertaining, but then, as I predicted in my last video, Raquel Rodriguez shows up and obliterates Rhea. Where things went wrong, at least what I think anyway, is that the referee was standing right in front of the interference and called for the bell. What I believed was the spot was that Raquel was supposed to hit Rhea behind the ref's back, then put her into the ring, hit her with her finisher, and then roll Liv over Rhea for the win. Instead, we got this weird finish where the bell goes for a DQ end, and Raquel proceeds with hitting her finisher and putting Liv on top of Rhea, despite the fact that the match is already over. It was a moment that left everyone scratching their head, and it just didn't feel right. I did say Liv would retain, and she kinda did, even though she did lose via DQ, so whatever. I'm gonna give this match a sideways thumb, as the finish was just so poorly executed that it made an otherwise solid match between the two feel forgettable. With the inclusion of Raquel into the mix, I'm assuming Rhea continues the program with Judgment Day, which looks to now have included Raquel, at least as an ally. With Liv setting her sights on Nia Jax for 4 weeks at Crown Jewel, that'll keep her busy while Rhea goes into a program with Raquel, which is exactly as I predicted in my last video. The final match of the night had the Bloodline Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu taking on the team of Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns in a tag team match. Before we could even get into the action, Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns were treated to grandiose entrances that were cool in theory, but just felt so out of place and poorly done. The acoustics of the arena may have played a part in how the band orchestra sounded, because it sounded at times like a kazoo was being played. After Cody came out, Roman followed, and I'm not even sure the band was playing at this point. Still, the OTC has just so much aura, and it was great to see him back in the ring and looking to be in great shape too. The match was a typical Roman Reigns style match, where the pacing in the first half felt kinda slow and allowed the heels to work their offense in and isolate one of the members of the face team, while building up towards that hot tag and setting up for the finish. Mind you, just because this is a typical thing doesn't mean it's bad, and I actually love the flow of this match. We also got a fantastic moment when Cody was taking down Jacob Fatu on the outside and set him up on the table for the big announced table spot. Before jumping, Cody pointed to Roman and gave him a salute in a way saying, "I'm taking the big guy out, you do the rest," before yeeting off the turnbuckle post and hitting a splash on Fatu. This led us to the finish, where Roman is setting up for the spear before Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa come out to set up a distraction, before Solo hits a spear and nearly picks up the win. Inching closer to the finish, a hooded figure wearing a bandana over his face appears and hits super kicks on both Tongans, before revealing himself to be none other than Jimmy Uso, who we hadn't seen since he was taken out by Solo and Tama Tonga months ago. The interruption from Jimmy allowed for Roman to hit the spear on Solo, get to 1-2-3, and pick up the win. Post-match is where we learn exactly why this match was slotted in the main event, as Jimmy and Roman embrace in the ring to reunite as two members of the original Bloodline before leaving together. At this point, Cody then gets jumped by Solo and the Tongans, which places Jimmy and Roman in a weird spot. Jimmy tells Roman, "You told him you got his back, and what are we gonna do?" To which Roman says, "Nah, this was just for the match." Jimmy rebuttals but says, "Up to you, you're the OTC," and they both run in to make the save. And if that all wasn't enough, The Rock comes out to close the show. He didn't do much outside of making his presence felt and holding up three fingers, likely to signal the three men in the ring, before doing a throat cut gesture and leaving. That was it. As a CM Punk fan, I can't help but remember the line he said from 2011, when he pointed out the fact that Dwayne was main eventing WrestleMania that year and he was not, which made him. Fast forward 13 years later, and the first Hell in a Cell to not main event a Bad Blood PLE includes CM Punk, who got to see The Rock involved in the main event later that night. I know both parties have matured and enough time has passed where neither Punk nor Rock are probably thinking about it, but I still found it kind of ironic. I'm going to give this match 2 thumbs up regardless of whether it should have been the main event or not, as I still enjoyed the hell out of this match and the stuff that happened afterwards. Clearly this isn't anywhere near close to being over, and you can expect the original Bloodline versus new Bloodline to continue building up towards Survivor Series, and maybe even past that. For Cody, it looks like he'll be taking on Gunther at Crown Jewel, but something intriguing happened once the camera stopped rolling that indicates we could be seeing something else in the pipeline. In the parking lot, we got a Kevin Owens heel turn that was off television and caught pretty much everyone off guard. Attacking Cody, Kevin Owens appears to now be switching over to the heel side and could be next in line to challenge Cody, which I think is what a lot of fans had been hoping for quite some time. Kevin is in a different element when he's the bad guy, and his prizefighter days were some of the best we got from Owens in memory. I'm also interested in seeing how this will affect Randy Orton, who is friends with both Cody and Kevin. Again, this is another fine example of a heel doing something for good reason, as Kevin hasn't hidden how unhappy he is with Cody's team up with Roman. Factor in that he stood tall with both Roman and a returning Jimmy Uso, and it's perfectly explained what led to Kevin Owens snapping. We'll find out more on SmackDown this Friday, but I'm also excited to see where they go from here and what Orton does as a result. Does he remain a face and side with Cody, turn heel with Kevin, or remain neutral and take a step back to allow his two friends to hash it out? Alright, that does it for this review, and honestly, it felt weird to be overly negative this time around, as I felt like the PLEs in the last couple of months have left me wanting more and excited about the future. Bad Blood this year just wasn't it, despite the fact that we got one of the best Hell in a Cell matches in history, and the next chapter in the Bloodline versus Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes, and beyond that. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of Bad Blood this year. I'm interested in knowing if anyone felt different about some of the matches, or if you were also as let down as I was. Remember to leave a like on this video if you liked it, hit the subscribe button if you really like my content, and hit the bell notification so that you don't miss out on any videos when they go live. As always, remember to be kind to one another and stay safe.